Welcome back to the Care and Conversation studio, live from the Care Show in Birmingham, with our key sponsor, Cornerstone Care Solutions, who are looking after us today. And we've just been chatting with Lucy about all the things we talked about this morning. But now we have a new guest in the studio, Amy Lewis. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Do you want to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I shall. I am Amy Lewis. So I'm Managing Director at Just Checking. And we do much more than we used to do. We do consultancy, we do assessment services, which is probably what we're better known for. And we provide enabling remote monitoring, I would call it, for supported living services, bit of home care to help people live a bit more independently in their own homes.
So when we boil that down, I know a lot about this. We know each other quite well.
Yeah.
We work together. So there you go. It's a really interesting kind of area where using this technology can, I think, really fill a gap in social care that is not fulfilled. And we make a podcast together called "What Does Good Care Look Like?" and we'll talk about that a bit. I was listening to the latest episode with Stella, who runs a home care company, and this idea of enhanced home care I found really interesting. And this idea that you go, home care is 3 visits a day, then when that's not enough, off to a care home you go. And that actually there's a big gap in the middle there of transition that allow people to stay at home longer. So talk about how the technology you guys make, how could that help
fill that
happen?
Gap. So the work with Stella is a good example. So you might have 3 visits a day and then it might increase to 24 hours a day, but that's very expensive for somebody to fund on their own. Obviously there's you can be eligible for funding and there's all of that as well, but people often have to contribute to that care. And if they've got a house, then they're going to have to spend that first. So what we're trying to do is plug that gap, as you say, so that we can give the support provider that 24/7 oversight and awareness of when they need to step in and help. And it could be just picking up the phone and going, is everything all right? Or, it could be just a check-in like that. Or it could be a bit of a long-term kind of strategic management of their care that links in health and all of those other things. So the data that we provide from the sensors placed around their home could be suggesting that actually for the last week and a half, somebody's not been eating their evening meal, or they've not been going to bed at night, or they've actually not been very mobile, or they've been using the toilet a lot, or whatever the case may be.
It's like the nan's fallen asleep in the chair type of thing.
Yeah. Which in and of itself is not a major
might
problem.
Might not be an emergency.
No,
but
you're not going to run round there because she's asleep in the chair and quickly whip her to bed. We're not going to do that.
No whipping of nans to bed.
No whipping of nans
to bed. There you go. That'll make the funny cut at the
end. But what we are going to do is say, actually, what is the issue behind this behaviour? So what are we looking to support differently, and how could we change that person's care plan in order to provide a better level of care, which then prevents them from ending up in hospital? So actually, if we can work on someone's frailty, if we can work on their mobility with them during the support hours that we do deliver direct support, then actually we can start to prevent that decline, which would then lead to a fall, which would then lead to a really lengthy hospital stay and surgery and all the rest that comes with it, and reablement. So that's what we're looking to do. We've worked in kind of the specialist complex care end of things, bringing people out of hospital when they've got a learning disability or autism for a long, long time. And it's a similar thing there, really. It's it's slightly different, I would say. The aim is obviously still independent, but the how that looks, I think, particularly for people who may be neurodivergent and struggle with that constant 24/7 staff presence. We was talking this morning on a panel around how technology is enabling more flexible models of support and self-directing support. So actually, for that group of people, it's probably more about how are we providing an enabling space for them? So how are we making sure that the house and the home works for them, so that they don't actually, when they're not using support, it doesn't need to be there. So we can call on it when it's needed, but actually the rest of the time we're encouraging both people to have time and space that they want in their own home, but also be able to call for help, or it to passively monitor and bring the support in when it's needed. So lots of different things.
So there's those two elements, isn't there? There's the kind of live monitoring style systems where it's enabling independence, because it means, and it's not with cameras, it's with sensors, so you can tell, is someone in bed, are they in the chair, have they been to the toilet, you can kind of sort of tell where they are in the space, without actually having to see where they are in the space. And then there's the element of that data where it's like assessment based, so you're looking at that later to make an assessment. But then I suppose the idea with the home care, because that's with the home care stuff, that's what it's done with now, isn't it? They're used for assessment, so it's used as like a lag measure, I suppose, where you record the data every couple of weeks and then look back on it and assess it. Whereas I think with the enhanced home care model, you would use that initially to assess, but then also going forward as a live monitoring system to help understand. And then I suppose if you can mix that with clinical data like diabetes, blood levels, or like urine samples, or then that can all be put together into the single system that can really enable picking up on those things. And it sort of sounds trite, doesn't it? But like a urine infection for someone who's in their early 90s can be really dangerous. Actually,
can be really confusing. Like there can be dehydration, there can be all sorts that contributes to then, a worsened condition which might end up in hospital.
So your podcast, What Good Care Looks Like. So episode 5 at the moment. Really interesting mix of guests that you've had on it, from someone who runs a learning disability college to people who are in receipt of care. What stood out for you from the sort of episodes that you've made? Like what?
I think
do a word cloud for me.
Independence, the word that's always raised. No, I think humanity is the word I would put in the middle of that, because everybody's got a story about why they're in care, or what, like some people it's because they've been in receipt of care, but actually there's always a story behind the values behind the person that is delivering this. And I think that's been the most interesting part, is going back on people's journeys, and probably in a way that they don't normally talk about it. You don't normally go, "Hi, I'm Amy from Just Checking. In my early days, this was my experience." And I quite like that, is that we're drawing out those kind of early conditions for how people ended up where they are now in delivering the kind of interesting support models, or receiving those interesting ways to be supported. And I think it's the story behind the people. And every single time they talk about, because we obviously asked the question, what does good care look like? Because we couldn't not. And every single time people talk about human experience.
Yeah. It's the idea of like there's tasks to be done in care, but then there's a way to do those tasks which allow the person who's receiving it. And then also being funny and fun, I think, was something that spilt out from both of the lads that are receiving care, and they both said, I like to have a bit of banter, but not everybody's going to like that. But I suppose that it paints that picture of like, without it sort of being like, okay, well, obviously, it's humanity. Like, it seems so obvious, but then it's not done, right? It's not actually delivered in a lot of ways. I kind of
think it is done. Like, and that was another point of the podcast, is that actually there's a hell of a lot of good practice that exists, and that care's being delivered in quiet corners all around the country all the time, all day, every day.
Like tens of thousands of times a day, right?
Absolutely.
Probably, actually, to be fair, probably millions of times a day.
And we highlight all the bad bits because it is difficult at the moment, because funding is a problem, because we're looking to the future and seeing a problem in terms of how we're going to fund it and how we're going to manage it. But it doesn't stop most people getting up every morning and doing a really good job. And actually, what I wanted to do with the podcast was say, it does exist. Because I think what we do a really good job of putting people off our industry because we talk about all the horrors.
Yeah.
I was sat down with friends the other day and we were talking about it. She's just trained to be a social worker, and immediately all the kind of negative stories come out. But actually, like, that's how the world views it at the moment, isn't it? It's pulling out all the difficult, challenging bits, but
the inevitably the failures that the system makes because it's just so bloody complicated. You can't like possibly get it right all the time. And then a lot of it, even if you do get something right, maybe that's not what that person wanted or needed. So you still, you can do wrong for doing right, I suppose, sometimes.
And but every single day, people are working really hard to deliver great outcomes for people. And from Ashley with her rescues, that is just amazing. Her background as well was really interesting. And then through to Stella and her diverse team, and talking about actually all the things that maybe we think are negatives about having quite a large migrant workforce now within social care, and the challenge of how we're going to deal with that when sponsorship ends and all of those things, which is all a worry. But she had such a different light on it. She talked about all the value that her diverse team brings, and she talked about how she'd always had this assumption that some of her older ladies that they were supporting wouldn't want young male workers, and that kind of assumption that we make and we put into things all the time. And she was like, they absolutely love it. And not everybody, obviously. I'm not going to make wild assumptions in the opposite direction. But I just think it's a really nice platform to talk about all those little details that actually, when you come to shows or when you talk about things more generally, you don't get that level of depth, do you? Yeah.
And I suppose part of it is that when we're making this video and people that are watching this are going to be from organisations who deliver care, and then how from their perspective do you turn a policy into something that actually provides that meaningful care for someone at the end of it, where and so how do you write those things with humanity baked into them, because you sort of need that formal policy as an organisation to sort of guide your team. So I think maybe that you've got to go back to the root of that, right, and look at how do you actually write policies in a way which allow your team to deliver humane care.
That's cultural, though. Like, I think when I've been in previous care management roles, we always recruited for values first, because you can't train values into somebody. And I think that's the interesting thing about the podcast is actually we started with the values. You can see through people's career how they've carried those values through, and that might grow and develop and change slightly over time, but fundamentally your principles remain the same, don't they? So I think when we recruit people, we have to start there, and all the rest of it absolutely can be trained, and that's where you've got policy and structure and all of those things. But I suppose, like, you learn from other people. It's about role modelling. So when we induct people as well, it's about them seeing you operating in practice. If you just turn up to somebody's front door, let yourself in with the key and walk in and shout at somebody. I don't mean shout at them. I mean shout for them. Tell them you're there.
Oi, Barbara, get out of bed.
That might be a little bit further down. But then that is how that person's trained in supporting people. It's your workplace first and not their home first. But if you knock on the door and wait for 3 or 4 minutes for somebody to answer the door patiently, and then ask them how they are and whether you're all right to come in, then that is the person that you're training. That's the behaviour that they'll take forward. So I actually don't, I mean, you can write those things into policy, obviously, but I think it's about good recruitment processes and good induction process.
I suppose you can't write every human interaction in, because then it becomes a you've got to react as your own human being to the situation that's in front of you. One of the ladies we talked to this morning delivers dementia training and has this sort of acronym around helping people interacting with someone who's living with dementia to understand their life story. Are they in any pain? What's their like comfort situation? There's a sort of analogy around it, which is really interesting in that kind of idea that allows that person to be a person at the end of the day, and use that sort of human interaction with that other with the person that was receiving the care. And fundamentally that's what care is, isn't it? It's looking out for one another. Like that
that's what we hope for. That's what we hope to do, and we need to address the issues that there's not enough people to do that. Like, that is a problem, and I think that's where technology does come in, because actually the bits where we don't require that kind of direct technology should assist with that. It should take away the burden of the things that don't deliver that bit of care. So the admin tasks and the remote monitoring I found really interesting, because I think it's enabled people to care more and care better.
Yeah.
But the general consensus would probably be initially that you're taking staff away from that situation and leaving somebody on their own, which I can see could be a way that you treat it. But actually, it, in my experience, has always been done properly and through a thoughtful process of actually what's that person's experience and how do they want to be treated, what does their life want to look like, do they want somebody with them making their breakfast, or is it needed? And I heard a really good story the other day from CIC, which was really touching. They had it was one of the TSA conferences in Derby, and they'd brought a recorded poem with them from one of the people they support, and they've developed their own internal tech team, which I think is the way forward. And within that, they've got like a monitoring centre. So out of hours, when a person is struggling, maybe they only receive a couple of hours support a day, or ad hoc throughout the week for certain things. That out of hours facility is just that safety net for them. So that's where technology can actually increase capacity, and that's what we're trying to do with the system.
I was listening to another podcast, not yours, but it's a different
What?
one. Yeah, I'm sorry. And they used an analogy of they were talking about a bricklaying machine, so like a robot that lays bricks, and they asked the question, isn't this going to put bricklayers out of work? And the bloke said, there's not enough bricklayers. So we're not replacing anybody's job because there's just not enough people that want to do this work. And I think it's the same in care. Even if you do start using technology, there's still 150,000 people additional that are needed, right?
Yeah.
And then if you do manage to, with technology, fill those roles, we'll then say, okay, well, how can we do the care better?
How can we use people anyway? We're nowhere near that yet.
Exactly, yeah.
So until that point, I don't think we need to be particularly nervous. But obviously, the general overview is slightly different to one staff member's picture. So actually, directly for them, perhaps technology does mean that I no longer do a sleep-in every Thursday night. Perhaps it does mean that to them. And that's a challenge we need to overcome. And that's where we need to work with our staff. And that's where a fair pay agreement needs to come in, so that people lean on that sleep-in payment because we're not paying them enough per hour. So that's where we need to kind of start looking at the system.
Yeah, and I suppose if that in your organisation that cuts your hours, that's what you see. I want to talk a bit about consultancy arm of Just Checking and what you're doing there. So obviously, you're a smart, innovative technology company. From a consultancy perspective, who do you want to work with? What value are you offering on that side of things?
It's about that kind of looking at the bigger picture, and so we've helped a couple of care providers where they perhaps don't have a tech strategy yet, and they're looking to see, what's the art of the possible is always the term banded around. So
being that kind of tech team you mentioned, I don't think the turn of phrase CTO is something that's used in British business full stop. It's a very American thing, but in care, forget it. But actually, care organisations should have chief technology officers. Again, they don't.
And we've obviously got NCF who are working to train up, and they've got a project on at the moment looking at the care technologist role. So the aim, I would say, is to have a care technologist in every care company. So, and obviously they're only going to be able to do so much. So it's not just about having one person that is fully responsible for technology to embed it throughout the organisation. It's going to be much more about them leading the way and having that suite of information and tools available to train everybody up. The way I view it is that in the way that all staff have a responsibility to safeguarding, we're going to be moving into an era where all staff have a responsibility to technology, that actually it needs to become part of our job roles. It needs to be at every level. There needs to be a level of responsibility in terms of the expectation of skill, but also the expectation of attitude and, motivation towards, what tasks are we completing. We need to kind of, in the early stages of anything, when it's still, we're still in its infancy, we're going to have these kind of key roles that have to be the point of contact. We see that with most things, but actually as it grows and develops, I expect that it will be something that you would work into every person's role.
So a care organisation, maybe a big home care company or a care home group or adults with learning disabilities, if you don't have a tech department now or a dedicated team that's looking at tech that Just Checking can help kind of get that journey started for you.
Yeah. Look at what you've got, see what's going on already, go out to all the staff, understand what's going on for them. Are they interested? Are there particular people in the organisation who are thinking, I'd love a bit of that? Because what we're trying to do is create careers for people as well. And I think technology can support that. So where we've got people that have been in the industry a while, don't feel like there's anywhere to progress unless they become a manager, which quite often happens, here's the opportunity to do something a bit different. And I think CIC would confirm the conversations I had with them the other day. Actually, their team is made up of support workers or people that have been particularly interested in that field, and they're the people that are responding out of hours. So now we've got a whole brand new job role that actually, they might not like elements of the other support work, but they might really like being on the phone every day to people and picking up calls and helping them in their time of need. So actually, we can start to offer really interesting roles for people.
And I suppose different roles, more flexible as people move through different stages of their own life where, maybe being on, doing an overnight is not feasible, because they might have young children or something like that. You give different options for people within your organisation to retain quality talent. And there's also be a local authority angle, wouldn't there, or on the consultancy side?
Absolutely. And that's about how we're commissioning care and support and actually looking at the models of support that we're delivering. We work with lots of authorities looking at, assessing, going in initially and saying, right, well, we've got a situation where we're supporting, 20 people across this site or the village came up the other day. We'll work with them, we'll go in, we'll assess everyone's support needs, what's happening for them. It's based around the activity. So maybe we're looking at the overnight model and maybe we're trying to understand how support's being delivered right now and then saying, right, okay, well, if we put monitoring technology into this situation, we can support differently, and it will be most likely with a reduced number of staff, because what we're doing is providing eyes and ears on things that actually staff would previously have to pop their head in to check for, or have video CCTV, which is not ideal. Like, that's not how we want to be supporting people. It's too restrictive.
And I suppose in that scenario, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds saved in individual settings, while also delivering a better quality of care that's more humane, that's just better. Because even a video camera now, it doesn't always show you what you need to see because if they're not in the right room, or it doesn't. So actually, the data, which is not video based, is much more accurate from that perspective.
And it's about the auditability of that. Like, how do I know as a manager that my staff member has been sat watching the CCTV at all? How do we know what we've missed? We don't know what we've missed in overnight situations. So when you use sensor-based technology in that scenario, not only are you highlighting certain things, but you've got the audit trail to go back on. And as a management team, I know as a manager for multiple settings, always struggled with how do we maintain quality in overnight support, because unless you pop in and do spot checks, which is what I did, I turned up randomly. Surprise, I'm here for the night, into different situations, then you're not sure, you're not certain because you're not observing it.
Because you can't get that data. And obviously there's, just as that example in like learning disabilities and in sort of sheltered living accommodation, but there's huge implications for like home care and then people moving into residential care. So, there's Council Cornwall, isn't there, that you work with, that you've saved a huge amount, like millions off their social care budget, but while delivering better care that's more that people are happier with, and then saving them a huge amount of money over a quite short period of time.
And that is just about making sure that the decisions that we make are informed through evidence. That's all it is. And we're not saying that social workers can't make informed decisions, but they're in a really difficult situation because they've got such limited time and they're trying to observe from anecdotal evidence. So I'm speaking to the person, I'm speaking to the family, perhaps there's a carer involved and I'm speaking to them too, but I might have 3 different angles going on here. So how do I form an opinion of 3 very different situations? And we often find that the person themselves might struggle to articulate their own care and support needs, and that's the person you really want to be listening to. So by putting the sensors in place, and I always feel it gives the person a voice to be able to demonstrate their capability in that scenario. And when we can see that more clearly, we can place care and support more accurately, and in doing so, make sure that they're delivering the outcomes are being delivered that they want and need. And at the same time, we're not wasting money. 3 people in the last month that I'm aware of have moved back from residential services into their own homes.
Yeah.
Because we've gone in, we've assessed that need and gone, actually, I'm not sure why this ever happened.
Yeah.
And that's not because somebody's not no good at their job or have made a mistake. It's because the information that was available at the time was limited.
And in just those individual cases, we're talking tens of thousands of pounds saved in a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the person is way happier.
That's where they want to be.
Yeah.
They've decided they want to be at home, but everybody decided the risk was too high. But actually, when we're looking at it, it's not.
Yeah.
So, it's those things. It's just being really intelligent with and making sure we've got evidence to support social work. And actually, the teams that we work with quite intensively, they love it because they've got 24/7 insight, 7 days a week into a scenario that they would have to, go around and kind of scrabble for information for. But we can hand that to them and say, look, here's what you're looking for. And it gives them a starting point to talk to people as well. So if there is a conflict between different opinions of that situation, because everybody worries about their family, especially when they're not there. And I think that's another place that monitoring technology can support families, because the family member who can't just get in the car or nip down the road and check that they're okay will worry outside of those times. And if mum or dad's not picking up the phone, like what can they do? And then that worry escalates to a point where they're like, well, they need to be in a care home because I can't look after them. And what we get.
Sometimes you're lucky enough to be able to text the neighbour next door to check in, but that's not always the case, is it? So anyway, I could probably keep you here for another half an hour and ask you another load of questions because it's very, very interesting stuff. But I'm going to finish here and I'll ask you one final question, but it's a biggie.
Oh, no.
You ready for it?
I'm ready.
If you were a biscuit...
Oh, no.
What type of biscuit would you be?
Bourbon came to mind.
Okay,
is that straight right?
in. Chocolate
straight
bourbon?
In. Chocolate bourbon.
Chocolate bourbon, yeah. Dunker? No Dunker?
Oh, Dunker.
Yeah, Dunker the tea,
Yeah. But not for too long.
Not for too long.
We don't want soggy tea.
What's your feelings on the gumph at the bottom of the cup?
No, we can't.
See, I don't mind it. I like it. I get a spoon at the end and eat it.
No, you don't, York. Do you really?
Yeah.
Well, you've changed my opinion of you.
It's controversial, I know. If I do happen to fly too close to the sun and break a biscuit, obviously I'm not intentionally trying to do that, but then I don't want to waste half a biscuit.
I'm going to watch you when you have tea and biscuits.
We'll have to get biscuits in next time we come to the office then. So, well, thanks very much for coming in. It's been great to talk to you and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.
We'll be back shortly with our next guest.